as equally as important. Today we're talking about, those forgotten ones. And I always say that because in many times, the minority of people that are struggling with particular challenges get forgotten in the system. And one of them is autism. And to bring more light to that, we're going to be speaking to Zaida Frank Ibrahim, the operations manager at Autism Western Cape. And she's going to talk to us about the challenges that they faced. And as I know, from doing a bit of research, it's very much a neglected topic. We don't look at people that are having, should we say, disabilities in many directions. And I think it's about time that we started as a community, not one step at a time, trying to move people into this better direction where they see, understand, get educated, and assist due to knowing about the awareness and the situations that people are facing in this particular sphere. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for joining me on the show this morning.
Walaikum salam. Shukran so much for having us. We're excited for the opportunity.
We were excited too. And as I said earlier, it's so important to get involved with people, like I said, that are facing situations. And, I think many a times, and I think you'd agree with me, is that people that are living with other people that have disabilities and setbacks actually get forgotten in the system. And I spoke to someone a while ago on my show, and I even spoke about, why not creating the proper ramps, creating the proper, things that people need as far as that is concerned. And I think that's something that has not been brought enough to light, and I'm sure you'll agree with that fact.
Yes, definitely. Having worked in the disability sector since 2014, I think that is the most predominant issue that we face, that there is no reasonable accommodation for people who have a disability. And then when we look at the different complex disabilities within the sector, we see that there's sort of a delay in terms of trying to get access to services as well.
Give us a bit of an outlook. I mean, we spoke a little bit about you, but explain to our viewers and our listeners what autism is, so that they can just get to understand it a bit better, so they know how to interact and communicate. Because I think this is the problem. And in a lot of cases, because people are not educated and brought to awareness about the situations that people are facing as far as this is concerned, I think they don't understand it. And this is where the problem comes in. It's being able to bridge the gap through education.
Yes. So autism is classified as a neurodevelopmental disorder in the DSM-5. It's a complex group of disabilities. So it formerly, someone would get a diagnosis of autism and ADHD, and now autism, ADHD, and some other learning disabilities all fall under this autistic spectrum. It is considered a spectrum, as each person has different strengths, abilities, and requires different types and levels of support. And so basically what we at Autism Western Cape tell people all the time is that autistic people just experience the world differently. And because it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, it means that the brain and the nervous system is affected. And so because the brain and the nervous system works together, it just interacts with one another and causes the person to experience the world very differently than someone who doesn't have autism. We at the organization, we kind of look at the 4 key areas that are affected when a person is diagnosed. And usually those are social communication issues, some behavioral issues, issues with information processing, and sensory differences, which is a very big thing for us at our organization. But I want to sort of implore the listeners and everyone else who wants to know more about autism just to think of it as something that allows the person to look at the world differently rather than the person being different from the rest of everyone else.
Interesting that you bring that up. And I think that's a very important point, is saying that they look at the world differently. But when you say that, it's about making the individual and the community at large, and not just one community, but many communities at large, to be able to educate them and say, this is how they look at the world and this is how we look at the world, and try to find a sync where we can learn to communicate with these types of people.
Yes, I think that is our main aim at the organization, to try and create awareness around what autism is. And because there are a lot of myths and misconceptions. You see a lot of things in
Mm,
media about autistic people, that they're either really smart, and
mm.
then within communities, in different communities, sort of in our African communities, in our low to middle income communities, we see that there's sort of myths around witchcraft and those kinds of things. And so a lot of our job is just coming in and demystifying that for people, making sure that they understand that it's something that you are born with, it's present from birth. It can be diagnosed at the age of 2, and that it's not necessarily that people with autism don't want friends. It's just that they lack sometimes the ability to communicate properly with others, or to communicate in a way that we might understand. And so, if we try and accommodate them reasonably within society, and we try and find means to communicate with them, and means to find out what it is that they actually need from us, it makes the situation so much easier, and it also helps to create this inclusive society that we're all working towards.
That's so true. Interesting that you bring that particular aspect up, because I'll tell you why. I always come up with a possible solution with my guests when I chat to them. Something interesting that I did, should we say, about almost a year and a half ago on my show, was meeting some phenomenal gentlemen from a particular community. And the reason I'm bringing this up is just to make you understand that,
Mhm.
we as communities and individuals can learn to bridge the gap. And the bridging the gap is through communication. That's the most important factor.
Yes.
And through communication comes the understanding and everything else that follows through with it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I found something so phenomenal, and I don't know how this can be integrated with yourself, but these gentlemen took kids from a normal background and within their
Mhm.
area, within their community, and integrated kids with these special needs. I'm going to say it that way, and integrated them into a little soccer game, which they would do at least sometimes once or twice a week. And it was
Mm.
phenomenal to sit there and watch and see the integration. Because let's be honest, because we're so uneducated about the situations that these types of people with special needs face, we don't understand the situation. And our kids are not taught to face the situations either. And I think as parents, we're guilty, as far as that is concerned. And it was phenomenal to sit and watch this particular aspect happen, where you'd see a normal kid running with a kid in a wheelchair, trying to get them to kick that ball, to get that ball, and it was phenomenal, because what it really did was bridge that gap of non-understanding, non-communication, and of course outcasting. And when I say outcasting, and I'm sure you'd agree with me the way you feel that way, is people that will, or parents and kids with special needs get outcasted in some way in society, because they're in their own little bubble, and they can't be integrated as such, because people don't understand how to integrate them. And I thought this particular project, as small as it was just out of fun. There was no way of saying that, no, we need you to win or whatever. Had taught these normal kids the type of respect, understanding, and communication as far as these special needs kids were concerned. And for me, I think that's one of the ways to bridge the gap, is to get communities to integrate with each other and say, well, we do have people with autism in our area. How do we learn to communicate? Because, I mean, let's be honest, as I said, the parents also get affected. They get so called outcasted, and they're not integrated into that same community that they live in.
That's absolutely right. So we see a lot of our parents, within our communities, sort of being ostracized because their child has autism. Sometimes people think it's because of bad parenting that a child is diagnosed, and so that is why it's so important to create that awareness. And I love the idea of the program that you just mentioned. I think that is what our country or our society is moving towards, because all of our white papers and our national development strategies and plans work towards a space where schools are inclusive. So that means that mainstream schools have to include autistic children within the classrooms, or have a separate special
Mm,
needs section within the school. And so I think if we start there, if we start with the children, if we start with creating some sense of understanding amongst kids, I think it will help to further, because they obviously are the generation and they are the future. So if we create that understanding early on, we create the understanding that everyone is different and everyone has, special abilities and special needs in some cases. If we create that sense of understanding now, we create a society that is embracing and accepting of people with autism, or all people with disabilities for that matter.
I agree with you there. And I would say it starts with the parents, because this particular project was started by the parents. And if we as parents can understand that there is a gap that needs to be filled in that particular space where kids have special needs, and going out there, and it's about starting, from it at home as well, by telling ourselves and telling our kids, you know what, that particular child has an issue. This is how you can deal with it. Try and communicate with the child. And I think a little bit of love also goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
For me, I read something important, and it says you grieve for the vision that you had for your only daughter. Talk to us about it.
Sorry, that was one of our parents who did
That's
the
right.
music.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. So
Tando.
talk to. I want you. Sorry, I'm going to butt in there. I want you to make our viewers understand how that parent felt, because that's the only way we're going to get educated to understand what these people are going through, what sort of challenges they're facing. Zaida, are you still on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I said I was just saying that I wish you guys would have met Tando. She's brilliant, and she's an extreme advocate for her son.
Right. Who's 12 years old? Am I right?
Yes, yes. And so Tando, like many of our parents, face the challenge of school. So once someone is diagnosed with autism and they need to go to a specific autistic school, if they're going the public route, because you obviously have the private and the public route. So within the private sector, you can pay anything from up to 10 to 15,000 rand a month for schooling, which is sometimes unrealistic for a lot of our parents in low to middle income homes. And then if you're going to go the public route, you're going to go on a waiting list, and the waiting list is 3 to 4 years long. So if your child is only diagnosed at 7 and they go onto the waiting list, they might only make it into school when they are 12 years old.
Sure.
And we're looking at, Tando is foreseeing, and many parents with autistic children are foreseeing this grim future for their kids, because we're looking at a lack of infrastructure that can accommodate their children. We're looking at lack of schooling initiatives that can accommodate their children. And then afterwards, these children then become adults who have learned no skill, who haven't been in a schooling environment, who then go on to struggle to find employment. And so I think when she says that she's grieving, I think it's the sentiment that is echoed by all of our autistic parents who are struggling to find access to services, who are struggling to find a means to an end. Some parents, only live off of their grant, and so it's difficult to get their kids to the necessary places. It's difficult to just get that access, and then once they're on the waiting list, it basically just becomes that, just waiting.
Would you say government has not done enough as far as special needs people are concerned? Because if I look at it on a general consensus, and not just with autism, if you look at it, how much has been created to be able to accommodate people with these types of situations?
South Africa we have a brilliant constitution, we have brilliant strategies, we have brilliant policies and procedures, but none of them are implemented appropriately. None of them are implemented in such a way that we can hold the people and be accountable for what needs to happen within society. So it always becomes a little bit of a catch-22 situation. If I say, we go to the Department of Social Development all the time, with the Department of Education, and we say it is a child's inherent right to education. So we need to create access to education and spaces for them to be educated. And they say, yes, but these are the plans that we want to implement, or this is what the Constitution is saying, or this is what the rights are saying. It then becomes very difficult to mitigate that. And with the lack of funding and infrastructure that we find within government itself, it also then further complicates the situation, because now organizations such as myself and other disability organizations are coming to them for funding so we can provide these services, and they themselves are lacking funding, or they themselves are, their budget doesn't increase, or it doesn't allow for increases, those kinds of things. So I would say that I can understand that there are some people in government, or that there's some level of understanding of the problem. It's just
Mm.
we need to now move further away from sort of just creating the awareness and just creating noise around autism and other disabilities, and that we need the help, and actually move into the implementation of these plans.
I agree with you. And I think it's being we have to take it to that level with people like yourselves to be able to create, should we say, maybe a forum where all, you know, people like yourselves, organizations that face special needs situations, is go to government on a collated level and say, look, these are the types of challenges each you know, special needs organization is facing, and these are the things we need going forward. I think it's maybe not enough attention has been brought to the fore as far as that
Yeah.
is concerned, and that is why they just turned, we're not saying they turn a blind eye, but I think they're not educated enough to be able to understand that there is a situation out there and the challenges are rather big, and maybe to get just one of them in development, you know, community
Yes.
development, to understand that these are the things that are required from a government level in order to be able to help those out there that are facing these particular situations.
On that note, Nafeesa, we are actually planning a march with parents, and the march is provincial. So it will happen on the 1st of April, which is on a Friday,
Oh,
and
wow.
it will include all of the provinces. So each of us in our different provinces, the Western Province, Northern Province, Eastern Province, we have a set date, a set time that we will all march to our different parliament houses and hand over a memorandum to the Department of Social Development, so that we can, it's a sort of a continuation of the march that we had last year, so that we
Mhm.
can let them know what the parents' problems are, what the parents' challenges are, what they are facing. And the march is so significant, not just for the organization, but for the parents, because this is actually an initiative that was started by the parents. They have organized everything. They have come together and said, you know, enough is enough. We have to get our voices heard, and we want action plans.
I think that's such a beautiful way of going forward, because this is going to create the awareness that I've just been speaking about. And that's the stepping stone. That's the start to many a milestones that are going that you are facing. And of course, hoping that they realize that and start putting things within their budget systems to be able to accommodate for organizations like yourself and the others that are facing the special needs issues. And of course, incorporating stuff into the malls and things like that as well for special needs people. It's not just about one aspect of it, but I think it's a holistic level of bringing people to understand what it is from a South African point of view, that the people from the special needs organizations and their communities really require.
Yes, it would be brilliant if that is what we could do, and that is something that I think all of our organizations are continually working towards. And I think within the disability sector, we all kind of feel like we've been neglected. Each
Mm,
disability in itself feels like we've been overlooked, we've been neglected. But more and more, the more I get to talk to other organization managers or other organization directors, I start to realize that this problem is something that all other organizations are feeling. And I think it's frustrating for us as the service providers, because my team, for example, services the entire Western Cape, and we're only 10 people. And so we see about 3,000 people a year. The total, an approximation, and that is besides our outreach that we do within the outlying areas of the Western Cape. So I think a lot of our organizations are just under-resourced, underfunded, and frustrated at this point.
most definitely. And I'm hoping with all my might. You definitely have our support structure. We're hoping to catch up with you on that day to see, what sort of things have transpired from that. And I'm hoping that it's a positive one, to get you moving in a better space, and moving all these people into better challenge, overcoming their challenges and the problems that they're facing. And I think that's important, is to find a better quality of life for all people with special needs. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. What words would you like to leave us with this morning?
I just would like to thank you for providing us with this opportunity, any opportunity to kind of get our voices out there and have our organization heard and have the needs of our beneficiaries and service users heard is a win for us as an organization. And I'd like to implore people to visit our website, take our free online course, and make contact with the organization if there are any queries that they have, no matter how small.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you all the best. Also, of course, should we say successes going forward with regard to this particular situation that people are facing. And I think we're really one of those organizations that understand the plights of the people, and you definitely have our support, and we're hoping to tap into you to see how far you've gotten post that particular march.
So thanks so much.
It was only a pleasure chatting to you. We wish you nothing but the best. And thank you so much for doing such phenomenal work and bridging those gaps where they really are needed. That was Zaida Frank, and she's definitely brought a lot of light to the situations and challenges of the minorities, we're going to call it that are forgotten in the spaces that they're facing as far as special needs is concerned. And I'm hoping that we as South Africans can get together, create that Ubuntu, and help these people move forward in some way. We're going to go for a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in a sec.